guys, and welcome back to the channel, Nate's Pink Bookshelf. My name is Nate Denise, for those of you who are new to the channel or who just happen to stumble across this video. And today's video is going to be me sharing with you guys the books that I want to read before the end of 2019. So I have a total of 16 books here, a mix of middle grade, YA, and adult. Most of these are going to be fantasy just because I'm on a fantasy kick and I just really want to read some good fantasies before the end of the year and things like that. So I'm not doing this because I want to reach my goal for Goodreads, because I have already completed my goal. Normally for the year I can read anywhere from 150 to 200 books. I knew that this year was going to be a little bit more complicated for me to read books just because I was a lot more active within my ministry at church and I was being elevated to a new position within ministry. So I set my goal to 75. I accomplished that, I think, over the summer. So then I bumped up my goal to 100 and I'm currently over that. I'm at 114 right now. I still have about 6 books to go for this month, so I should be at about 119, 120 before the end of October. So I feel like I can definitely read these books. I read anywhere from 8 to 15 books a month. I do read pretty quickly, and I always read multiple books at the same time, and I try to spend at least 3 days, no more than 3 days on a book, unless it's super long, then 4 days. But I'll do a separate video on how I read and things like that. But these are going to be all the books that I really, really want to read. I have them on my TBR cart, so I will not be picking any of the other books on my shelves. These books will be read for the next 2 months. So, diving in, we're going to start with middle grade. The first one is called A Monster Like Me by Wendy S. Swore. And this one sounds like it should be fantasy, but this one is more of, I don't want to say magical realism, but more of a middle grade contemporary in a sense. So you have this little girl, and I cannot remember her name for the life of me. Her name is Sophie, and she is supposed to be like a monster expert. She has this book that is called The Big Book of Monsters, and she feels like, you know, her best friend is a fairy. She feels like the good neighbors are witches, good witches, and then like the bullies are trolls and goblins. But she feels like she herself is a monster because she has this mark on her face that the doctors are saying is because of a blood tumor. So she's just trying to deal with that the best way she can, and that's by using her imagination. It sounds like it's really heart-gripping and heart-wrenching. I know that this has to do with the real-life situation from the author herself, so that is that. And the reason why I have this on my list is because I was sent this from the publishing company, Shadow Mountain Publications, and I have worked with them plenty of times on their other middle grade and like contemporary romance novels, and I just love everything that they have produced. So we have this book, and I'm super excited to get into this. I'm not gonna lie, this was literally a cover request. They actually sent an email to me prior to the release of this book, and I just denied it. I didn't care for it. But then when I went on their Instagram page and saw them take a really pretty picture of this book without the dust jacket, because it's just baby blue with gold foiling, I fell in love with the cover of the hardback. So yeah, I requested it. So we have this book. The next book is not middle grade, it's more YA, but I classify it personally as middle grade because it's meant for like 10-year-olds and up. That's just, in my head, I think middle grade is like anywhere from like 8 to 13, and then like books that are meant for like 15 to 17-year-olds, I consider YA. Don't ask me. I don't know. That's just how I think. But that is going to be the Graveyard book by Neil Gaiman. This book, all that I know is that it deals with a young boy that is raised by the ghost at the graveyard. That's all I know. This does include pictures, which is why I also classify it as middle grade, because it has artwork in it. But I'm excited to dive into this. This definitely gives that kind of fall creepy vibe. I should have been reading this for October, but I have so many books to read this month, so we're just gonna try to read it in November in the fall. So yeah, we have this book. Moving on to my YA books. So the first 2 are mass market paperbacks. The first one is going to be Howl's Moving Castle by Diana Wayne Jones. Right? Wayne Jones? I think that's how you say her name. I don't know much about this. I know that it's fantasy. That I do know. And it deals with a floating castle in the air. That's all I know. I know that there is an anime for this. I'm not sure if it's like an anime show or an anime movie, but I have watched reviews and people like both the show and the book, but they say that the movie slash show, I don't know what it is a little bit off from the book. So I'm still gonna watch both and read the book. So I'm excited to dive into this, and I don't know, I just wanted something that's more of a classic in a sense to read YAY. So we have Howl's Moving Castle. Next I have Say Real by Garth Nix. This is a book that I've had on my freaking TBR for literally half this year. And every time the month comes, I just never get around to freaking reading this book. I do own the audiobook for this, so I'm going to listen and read as, you know, a duo together. But all that I know is that this is YA fantasy that deals with magic, and I believe the main character is a girl, but she kind of like disguises herself as a guy. I've heard that it's kind of like Harry Potter, but we shall see. I'm excited to dive into this and finally get this series going. Next book we have is going to be YA Paranormal, and I'm excited for this. This author is one that I own all of her books but have yet to read any of them, and that's because I want to start up with her YA series. This was actually written after her first series, which is the Paracel Protectorate series, but this is the YA version that takes place in the same kind of world. This is more kind of historical fiction, but it's paranormal, and that's going to be Etiquette and Espionage by Gail Carriger. This is the first book in the Finishing School series. I do own the first, second, and fourth book. I don't have the third, but I do have it on ebook, but I have physical copies of the first, second, and fourth book. Yeah, it says the fine art of finishing others. So it is dealing with paranormal beings. It deals with kind of like assassination and things like that. It's a finishing school that teaches actual art, dance, and etiquette, but it also teaches you to deal with death, diversion, and espionage. And I'm excited. It sounds really cool. So. Okay, so the next book I have is again YA fantasy, and this is by Olivia Blackburn, and it is Midnight Thief. It's the first book in the Midnight Thief duology, and I've been waiting to read this since it came out. It came out in 2014. I've had this on my TBR for 5 years. I own the ebook, but when I found the physical copy at my library's book sale, I decided to get it. And all that I know is that it deals with a young girl named Kyra. Let me just make sure I'm saying that right. Yes, her name is Kyra, and she basically grew up on the streets, and she's really good at kind of stealing and getting past guards and stuff like that. So she's hired by the Assassin's Guild to do a job, but she's hesitant on doing it. And then it deals with Tristram. It's kind of like Tristan, but there's an M instead of an N. So Tristram, who was a young palace knight who's on a mission. His best friend was murdered by the Demon Riders, and the Demon Riders are a vicious warrior clan of bloodthirsty wildcats. So, yeah, it's just them two coming together in a fateful raid. So, yeah, it's just two enemies coming together, and it just sounds really, really fun and cool. And honestly, I wanted this because the covers are gorgeous. Yep. The next book is going to be Salt and Storm by Kendall Cooper. This has mixed reviews on Goodreads, but it still was something I wanted to read myself. YA fantasy, it deals with a young girl named Avery that is a witch, and she wants her inheritance, which is to be the witch of, what is the island? Prince Island? Yeah, she wants to claim her birthright as the witch of Prince Island, and it deals with a kid named Tane, who is the tattooed harping boy with magic, and just two of them fighting and surviving and all that great stuff. The next YA fantasy I have is Blood Rose Rebellion by Rosalind Eves, and this, all that I know is that there is a young girl who is highborn, but she has no magic, and it's kind of like, I guess, unheard of in her town or in her family to not have magic, but apparently her magic is not having magic. If you guys watch Black Clover, it's kind of like Asta, the whole situation with him not having magic and how that's really his magic. So yeah, it's her coming to terms with her ability of not having magic and whether she should help with the rebellion against the highborns or not. Sounds interesting. I'm not gonna lie, this was another cover read for me. The cover is stunning. I just love the silver with the red and also on the spine. That pretty much that's it. The next YA fantasy is going to be Sarah J Maas's Catwoman Soul Stiller. I enjoy Sarah J Maas's writing. I have not read the rest of Throne of Glass just because the series is getting on my nerve. I adore her ACOTAR. I mean, adore. I'm not sure if I'm going to continue on with the series though, because I know there's 3 more books coming out that's kind of like a separate trilogy spinoff. Don't know if I'm going to read it, but I definitely want to read this because I do enjoy Catwoman. I love Catwoman, the movie. So yeah, I'm trying to get into the whole ordeal with like the DC and Marvel comics and icons and stuff like that. But yeah, this is from the DC icons. I know that Marie Lu did one, and I know that there's one on Batman. So if I like this, then I'll get the other ones. But I really just wanted to dive into this because I do like Sarah J Maas's writing. And I want to see what she does with Catwoman because I'm a super major fan of Catwoman. So yeah. Okay, the last YA fantasy that I have on my list to read before the end of 2019 is going to be Descendant of the Crane by Joan He. I'm probably saying it wrong. I apologize if I'm butchering the name, but this was my book of the month pick from my regular book of the month box, and all that I know is that this is Chinese-based fantasy, and it just sounds really awesome. Outside of like the magical aspects, it has to do with a lot of political intrigue as well, so I just thought it was going to be a great one to read, and this cover is like everything to me. Everything. And yeah, so I wanted to read this before the end of the year, so we have that. Okay, so now moving on to my adult novels. Again, these are all fantasy with 2 paranormal romances stuck in here, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 2 paranormal romances and then 4 high fantasy novels. So the first one is going to be Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. I have read this before. It is not something that's new to me. I definitely read this before and enjoyed it. I read the ebook version. I have a paperback copy, so I want to reread this so that I can get back into diving into the world. I want to try to start reading one of these a month to catch up, because I think there's like 17 or 18 books total in this series, and I probably like read 3 of them out of order. So yeah, I want to reread this because it's sexy, it deals with vampires, and it's paranormal, and I just love me a good vampire paranormal novel with some romance. Yes. So we have Dark Lover. The next book is going to be by Jenna Showalter, which let me just say, I love Miss Jenna Showalter. I love her adult novels. I love her YA novels. She is just a phenomenal writer for me. And that's going to be Shadow and Ice. This is the first book in the Gods of War. I have not read this series yet, obviously. But I do have an arc of the sequel. And I also have read her Darkest Touch series. This series is called Lords of the Underworld. I have read them a lot more than J.R. Ward's books, but I love her writing, and I really just want to dive into a new series from her because it's amazing. It deals with alpha males. So I'm not sure if they're werewolves or vampires, but it sounds just delicious. So it's delicious. That's what we're gonna say. And this cover, I need a paperback copy of the mass market paperback of the sequel, because I love that. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the high fantasy. I probably should not start with this one from Brandon Sanderson, but I'm going to because it is a standalone for now. I heard that he's going to continue on in this world down the line, like with the series, but I'm just going to start with this since it's currently a standalone, and that's Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson, and I really just want to dive into his books. That's all there is to it. So this cover is freaking gorgeous though. I wish I had a larger hardback copy of this or a larger paperback, but the mass markets are a lot cheaper and don't bother me. They're easier to travel with versus a humongous paperback or a humongous hardcover. I don't know much about this like at all. I couldn't even tell you guys, honestly, no idea. But I heard that it's really good, and I want to get into it. So I can't even pronounce this girl's name. So I'm definitely gonna have to listen to the audiobook while I read this, so that I don't butcher any names and locations. The next one is more of a reread / continuation, because I mentioned this in my intimidating TBR tag. I have read this book before. I've read half of it, and then I just gave up on it. I don't know why. Oh no, I remember why, because it was a slow start, really slow start, but I really want to dive into this because I know that Peruse Project here on YouTube, she really loves the series, and I know that I'm gonna love it. I don't do slow starts. I received this book 5 years ago for review and still have yet to finish reading it, so I want to reread it again, and that is going to be City of Tears by Robert Jackson Bennett, and it's high fantasy. So yeah, that's all I know. This one follows a girl named Shara who's trying to, I guess, solve a murder. It deals with dead gods, buried histories, magic, and all that great stuff. So, yeah. The last 2 are epic fantasies that a lot of people have raved about that I really just want to dive into since I had the first book of the series. So the first one is going to be The Fifth Son by N.K. Jemisin, and this one says every age must come to an end. All that I know is that this is like an epic fantasy, high fantasy, that deals with a lot of the earth like breaking and stuff like that, and that's all I know. I know Peruse Project loves this book a lot. I'm probably going to mention her channel a lot just because I know that she reads a lot of these high epic fantasies. So, yeah, there are other YouTubers that I've seen review this, but hers is the one that like pops into my head immediately. But yeah, it's the first book in the trilogy, and I'm excited to dive into this. I do own this trilogy as well as her other series, but I just want to start with this one. It says Discover the Broken Earth trilogy, and this is the way the world ends for the last time. It starts with the Great Red Rift across the heart of the world's sole continent, spewing ash that blots out the sun. It starts with death, with a murdered son and a missing daughter. It starts with betrayal, the long dormant wounds rising up to fester. This is the stillness, a land familiar with catastrophe where the power of the earth is wielded as a weapon and there is no mercy. If I'm not mistaken, this follows very different POVs, so I think there are 3 or 4 different POVs in this book, but I'm excited to dive in and see what I personally think of it. Okay, so the last book is one that I had to really decide on because I kind of wanted to read both of his series, but I decided just to go with this one because it's the larger one. I might sneak in the last one as well, but we'll see. But this one is The Black Prism by Brent Weeks. This is the first book in the Lightbringer series, and all that I know is that this deals with light, colors, and that is how their magic works. I don't know an extensive amount of information on this. I do own the first book. I have a hard copy of the 4th book, but this one says that Guile is the prism, the most powerful man in the world. He is a high priest and emperor, a man whose power, wit, and charm are all that preserves a tenuous peace. Yet prisms never last, and Guile knows exactly how long he has left to live. When Guile discovers he has a son born in a far kingdom after the war that put him in power, he must decide how much he's willing to pay to protect a secret that could tear his world apart. It's action-packed tale of magic and adventure. That's all I know. It sounds really interesting, and I really wanted to dive into this. And you know what? I am going to add his other series, so let me grab that book. The official last book, because I really do want to read this other book from Brent Weeks, is The Way of the Shadows by Brent Weeks. And I think this one deals more so with assassination. It is high fantasy, but it deals with assassination, and I'm super stoked. So it talks about this guy named Durzo Blent. Assassination is an art, and he is the city's most accomplished artist. For Azoth, survival is precarious, something you never take for granted. As a guild rat, he's grown up in the slums, learned to judge people quickly, and to take risks like apprenticing himself to Durzo Blent. But to be accepted, Azoth, I think that's how you say it, must turn his back on his old life and embrace a new identity and name. As Kyler Stern, he must learn to navigate the assassin's world of dangerous politics and strange magics and cultivate a flair for death. So this is another one that I really wanted to start from him. I own the first book. I also have the sequel here with me as well. So I really just want to get into a lot of Brent Weeks and see what I think of him. So that is it. 16 plus 1, so 17 books on my TBR that I want to read before the end of 2019. We will see if I can get through all of them. I'm pretty sure that I can because I normally divide my books into 3 days. And what I mean is I take the total amount of page numbers, divide that by 3, and that is how many pages I have to read per day, and that usually normally works for me. Sometimes I divide it by 2, sometimes I just read a book in a whole day depending on how I feel and what I'm doing. But yeah, that is it. A lot of fantasy. I'm a fantasy lover. I love good fantasy. I'm trying to find some other fantasy novels to get into, more epic and high fantasies, outside of like the mainstream fantasy authors. But that is pretty much it for this video, you guys. What are you guys looking to read before the end of 2019? Leave it down below. I'm always interested in like building my TBR further, even though I have way too many books on my TBR. So yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video. Thumbs up this video, subscribe if you aren't subscribed, and if you are subscribed, click the bell to stay notified, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!